You're live.
Welcome to our, I think this is March edition of our Kentucky K-12 CIO and EdTech Leaders Webcast. I'm David Couch with the Department of Education. I say that because it felt like really warm weather. I mean, I can remember being in short pants and short shirts just 2 days ago and getting great sun, and now I'm in, snow boots and an inch and a half of snow. So definitely the icy part. So I appreciate you all joining us today. I know some of even our staff had to do an about face trying to get here, and because of all the wrecks in the area, the lanes being blocked off, just did an about face and went back home. So I definitely understand that. Here in the Franklin County and Frankfort area, it's pretty clear. Just for those, but I know the surrounding areas, they haven't quite had to figure to deal with snow and ice. So they have great trouble keeping the roads clear and safe. So yeah, December 2.0 edition. So I appreciate those that are able to attend today. I know this is really short after our Kentucky K-12 CIO Summit and then the CAST conference last week, but want to take this opportunity to really focus in on two topics that really can't wait another month. One is an update on the legislative session, which we're right in the middle of, or maybe just over the halfway part. Can't really always figure that out. And then I wanted to go over the results in a closed session versus just general public, because our CIO Summit is closed just for our Office of Education Technology staff, OET, and our district leaders. But we had X number of our, even with our OET staff, they're familiar with the results for their table, but not the other 23 tables that we had going on. There were 22 tables. And the same thing with the districts that participated. They kind of know the results of their own table, but the other ones. And then we have part of our staff, OET staff, that weren't in the room, and our districts weren't in the room. So I want to share those results. They were really good. And just for in the front end of it, is we scramble the tables, we remove the table numbers because we really want to protect the identities of folks that give straight input. So we scramble the table numbers, we remove the district names, we remove vendor names that are not what I call we closely work with in KETS, the KETS product standard, mainly because there was some fussing about some vendors. And there was some compliments about some vendors. And obviously, if they're fussing about one of our KETS vendors, we left all that in there. But we didn't want this to be a marketing kind of thing for folks, because vendors would say, "Well, you're marketing this other product, across the state, or you're fussing about my product across the state." So we wanted to be conscious of that. So tried to remove those. Just aware of that as we go into that in that session. Before we get our legislative update, we want to make sure you're aware of some dates of importance here that are coming up in the near future. On the 25th of March, our own Marty Park will be representing KDE as a representative as they talk about the difference that, or just the area of focus on AI in Kentucky K-12 classrooms on Education Matters broadcast. That's a pretty big deal with Kentucky Educational Television. They brought that series back. KETS has been highlighted that on a few previous ones, but it's been a while, and it's going to be a good topic. And Marty, as I understand, you're going to have some district representatives with you, maybe a higher ed one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's a panel that's been pulled together by KET, and I think a really cool part is that they're working to get students involved as well. So they'll do some potential panel conversations with students, and then roll in some additional footage. And I believe there'll be some General Assembly member participation as well.
Oh, okay, good. So that's filmed on the 25th, but it takes a while for them to edit down. So if you take a look at that link that I put there, that gives the dates. I just put two of the dates. I seemed like there was 5 or 6 of them. But on the 6th of April at 8 p.m. and on 12 April at 2 p.m., that's kind of on their main channel that you'll see that. But they got some other channels, and click on that link for it. I think it shows 5 or 6 times. So just want you aware of that. We've talked about this, and you can take a look in the summary notes, and I encourage you always look at the summary notes that Lisa Moore helps us out with. Thank you, Lisa. Where we talked about the 3 April deadline. Just want to keep that in your radar screen, because we're not going to go over the Go Guardian update like we normally do and the Q's update on this. And then on the 24th of April, we have another one of my favorite work days of the year, is the STLP State Championship. There's a good plug for it, Jeff Sapolsky. Thank you, Jeff. On a Friday. I think we've ever had it on a Friday before. So on a Friday, so we're looking forward to that. So those are 3 big events there coming up. So let's circle back to the legislative session update. And if you take a look at your summary notes that I sent you yesterday, and there's a few other things beyond those that I'll hit on, and Lisa keeps up with that. Lisa Moore keeps up with that. What's going on with that from the EdTech perspective and even beyond. And I wanted to go over a few of these items, and any one of our staff that's familiar with these can jump in, or if there's any kind of questions, I'll be looking here at the chat to see if I see any kind of questions. So on the budget, we have additional budget requests to increase the Kentucky Education Technology System KETS funding by $14.6 million a year. Now, just as a reminder, and it's always worth reminding folks of this, is our budget has been over the years cut by $10 million. So some of this is just trying to recover from the cuts that have happened over the course of 10 or 15 years. The other part of it is the cost of living increase. We've never got a cost of living increase since the birth of KETS in 1992. So both of those are coming to a head. This is our 3rd attempt to try to get the cuts addressed, and to try to get the cost of living expenditures addressed to position us for the future. And it's worth doing that. And just as a FYI, so far, the additional budget request has not been identified to be funded. And there are serious consequences to districts when that happens. And I meet with the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative superintendents on Wednesday. Anytime I'm in front of a group of superintendents, and I encourage you, your superintendent, make sure they understand the consequences to you all when that happens. Because when that happens, certain things start rolling back down to the district to pay for and to take responsibility for when no funding is there to sustain that, which right now is happening. Obviously, we're working with the Senate to try to get that addressed. But I know with the superintendents, and this makes sense, is they're trying to get more money for SEEK, and that makes perfect sense. But the same breath, they need to try to get the money for the KETS restored. Otherwise, this money increase they're getting for SEEK, they'll have to spend it, and they'll have to spend a great deal more than we normally would. So, for example, with online registration, districts will pay 40 to 60% more than what we pay. There's nothing we can do about that. You will definitely pay for that to continue on that service. So not only will you be absorbing that, you'll be absorbing that at a much higher cost than we could have paid if we paid for it as a shared service. And there's a large group of things in that category that we just reached the point we can no longer fund it. We've tried, this is like over 6 years, we've tried three different biennium sessions, and if that does not happen, there are consequences to you all that you need to start talking with your superintendent and chief financial officer. It is not too late for you to, make word up to the legislators of the impact it will have. But if that does not happen, then you as the CIO EdTech leader will need to start working with your CFO and your superintendent to get a cut of those increase in SEEK funds to pay for these costs that are EdTech related that are going to be rolling down to the district. So that's, you don't have to start having those discussions. Obviously, if we get it in the KETS funding, then that makes it a little bit, that makes it a lot easier on you because it is in your budget. But if it is not, then you got to go battle with all the other funding sources in the district to try to get it to be addressed. So just, I don't know how to put that. I can't touchy-feely that too much. And it's going to take you all to have a very blunt conversation with your superintendent to say, hey, listen, let's make sure we get that SEEK increase which is good. I think that's always good. But if they don't mention improving the technology funding at the same breath, then there's definitely impacts to you all on that happening. And we're not happy about it either. It's been a great service that we've been providing for quite some time. So try to get to the right people, the right financial people, to try to get it on their radar screen. The timing is never too late. It's never too late. And if you're just counting on somebody to take care of you, you should know how that works by its age in life. By you just being quiet and just worrying about someone taking care of you. You better start speaking up. So that's the budget, and within there was the online registration, trying to keep up and increase our cybersecurity defense, increasing the KETS offers of assistance, addressing the Kentucky K-12 Student IT Academy growth. We have reached the point that is being maximized. Students getting very marketable certifications has reached the point that students have maxed that out, and we'll have to start turning people away. We will definitely have to start turning people away with that service. And so it was one of the ones that was cut previously, unfortunately. And we have cost of living increases. For example, our financial management system with Tyler Munis goes up X amount every year. We've never got a cost of living increase for that since 1992. Our budget can no longer absorb those. And so someone else has to start paying for those increases. So that's just a small example. I can give a long listing of those, but that's just what's getting ready to happen as we've tried to address this in a variety of ways. Artificial intelligence, it's my understanding that funding has also not been approved. I know we were trying to get artificial intelligence professional development. My understanding is from the legislative side, that was a separate type of thing beyond our original budget request, but somewhat related, a related cousin. I don't think there's any movement that I know about that being funded. And if you don't kind of understand how it kind of works, House gives their budget, then the Senate does, and then they have a conference committee, which is probably the most important group that ever meets to determine the budget at the very end. And they kind of work on things at the end. So even if it's not in the Senate budget, which you hope it is, there's a group of like 10, 12 people that meet that's a mixture of House and Senate folks. And they work out what the final budget will be. And it's never too late to give that at a bat. And I can recall in the past that we had 2 or 3 CIOs in districts that really helped make that happen across the finish line with KETS in the past. And, need that to happen again. We're doing our part, but if the district and CIOs cannot help us with that part, then there are consequences to you all directly. And you'll feel them pretty quickly going forward if that's not addressed. I've already talked about the House bill and the Senate bill. I don't think the Senate has not given their budget out yet, right, Lisa? I don't think this has been public.
I put a note in the chat, David. Senate A&R actually meets tomorrow, and House Bill 500 is on their agenda. So we, of course, are anticipating a committee sub, and hopefully our legislative liaison will be able to get his hands on a copy of it. Otherwise, it'll be later tomorrow before we know what's actually in it, but that will probably be the Senate version of the budget.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, they meet at 10 o'clock.
Thank you. There is a piece of legislation that is EdTech related that passed and has become a law because it had an emergency clause in it last Tuesday. It's House Bill 314. As I put in the summary notes last month, this bill has potential to help us get all of our Kentucky K-12 internet connections operating in a consistent way. Another key component of that is the Kentucky Department of Education Chief Information Officer, CIO, becomes chair of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. And that went into place last Tuesday. And by the way, if you're not keeping up with it, I sit in the position of the KDE CIO position. So as of now, I'm the chair of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. So that went into place, an emergency clause last Tuesday. House Bill 307. This is a pre-admission bill for KEA, Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. Council for Post-Secondary Education in Kentucky Stats. We have worked extensively, we being Katie, the agency, with the appropriate legislators, trying to educate them on there are already existing methods to address this versus creating a third method. And we have given that a strong at bat of not creating a third method because the third method requires new money. And I think I explained to you before, we didn't get money to absorb our cuts before to build a system, new money to maintain a system, new money for new positions to implement that new system and operate it. So we are trying our best to be good stewards of taxpayer funds. Let's take advantage of systems we already have in place to make students aware of their higher education opportunities. For example, there is a tool, an Infinite Campus, that can be used to make students aware of their eligibility for their acceptance to higher education. That thing is already in place. It can send information straight to students and their parents by the district. And that's really district data. We really don't own that. It's district owned data. And there's another method that's available to do that that we've approached through Kia, who already has this information. But there's definitely efforts beyond KD to try to have a third one, and we are pushing back hard on that as we can. But some of this is you have folks that want to build a third one. I do remind them is part of this is they want student email addresses, and there's two problems with that associated with it. Is anytime a mass email is sent to anyone in a district, and including K, the agency, by a mass email, typically it's blocked by the spam filter, so it doesn't reach them. If it makes it through the spam filter, it typically goes into their junk mail, which they typically, the average person does not open. And so the odds of all this effort to gather student directory information and provide it to higher education organizations, and them sending out just a big mass email probably results in being blocked by the district, and just because this way spam filters work, or going to junk mail and students not looking at it. The other part is even student email addresses for a good number of districts are not part of their directory information. And so even if we go through this effort, X number of districts do not include that. So we'll be giving things to higher education that don't have, and building a system, maintaining a new system with money that we don't have, that will take away from other things to do this. So obviously our office is pushed back on it as hard as we can push back on it. And from every angle, telling why this is not a good idea. This is not a good approach. This is not being a good steward of taxpayer funds, given there's two other methods already in existence to do this. So there's parts of it you try to educate people the best you can, and then you have other folks saying we really want this, and and they're not worried about what pays for it, even though there's a lot of duplication of it, and of people that are already covered up doing work, trying to say we're just going to load that on top of you. So obviously we've pushed back on it. I don't know how successful we will be or not be, because of just the folks wanting this data that they used to get from a vendor that they can no longer get. So they want us to take on that role. I think I've said it as nicely as I can and as informative as I can. There was a bill that it stopped early, and it was stopped early because we were able to educate the legislator that we already have. A lot of this is we have systems, and I don't say we can't get better with things, but a lot of this is awareness of folks of things that are already in place that are working well. And we already have really good systems and ways compared to the other 49 states to gather inventories of information from districts and what they're purchasing things on in education technology than the other 49 states. So part of this is just educating legislators, well-meaning legislators, that we already have something in place that does that, and I believe that's staying where that's not going forward. I don't know what the odds are of this one. I think it's promising, a bill identifying a funding source for the replacement of the Kentucky educator system placement system. So I think that's still promising. Lisa, is there anything you've heard otherwise?
David, that bill passed almost unanimously out of the House on the 11th. And so it has moved to the Senate. It's still in committee on committees in the Senate. So they've started doing a lot of pulling them out of committees and doing like a first reading and then putting them back. So if they choose to move it forward, they can do it pretty quickly. The Senate has already, they've also started using the consent calendar, similar to the way that our board does. And so I think a lot of confirmations and non-controversial bills like this will probably get begin to be added to like consent. So I think it could still make it through.
Okay. That seems promising.
Yep.
Just talking to folks. We're trying to get some outdated stuff we tried for 2 decades to get some wording removed from from laws and bills that groups and things they haven't met in 3 decades. So we tried for 2 decades. Maybe this is the year that we finally can remove confusing legislation. So the assessment and accountability that I'm not sure exactly where that's at. I know a lot of time and energy has been spent on the assessment accountability system, modernizing that. Obviously, from a EdTech perspective, which I try to keep this focused in on, that affects online testing. And for our staff and OET that deals with school report card dashboard, that has consequences to that. So, Lisa, anything else you know about that I don't know?
There is a meeting, I believe, tomorrow uh, with some of the Senate leadership. It hasn't moved yet over in the Senate, but the same thing. They hope that after they have this meeting and Education Committee meets on Wednesday, haven't seen the agenda yet, but it's very possible that it could move starting on Wednesday.
Okay. There is a bill that I think it's gone through to try to clean up and fix some of the negative consequences to the traceable communications. Um, so hopefully
Yep.
that's going to make it across the finish
Yep.
line.
And David, there's two of those. There's Senate Bill 181 from this year, has the same number as the original bill passed in 2025. And now there's a House Bill 67, which is slightly different and goes into a little bit more detail. And House Bill 67 is the one that is moving.
Okay. Last one, EdTech related, and unless I've skipped over one, there was a bill that was proposed, I think on the last day you could propose bills. And I'm gonna use kind of a basketball term since we're in the middle of the Sweet 16 and the girls and boys and the NCAA tournament. I call it the K5 shot clock on EdTech. Um, Meaning there was a proposal to say there's only a certain amount of hours that education technology can be used by K through 5 students. And I don't know if it was beyond K through 5. There was a lot of things that were in that proposal. And part of it is and I know you all got a lot going on, and maybe this is something the chief academic officer, I know ours spoke up to it of um, how much education technology is used in the classroom and how much is not used. And for example, if you just do a search on how much is education technology for grades K through 5, how many hours on average per day is it used by students? It's close to about 45 minutes to an hour a day, which is only 14% of the school day. Now, if you read the proposal, it says we want it to be a maximum of 45 minutes. Now, I would say even if you did something like that, you need to make it an average versus a maximum per day, because there are certain days you may use something more than others. But the other thing is, how do you even track that? Because there's not things on all these systems that track it. But it goes back to something I've talked about before that's worth us talking about. And when I talked to my peer for North Carolina, she had the same concerns. What's happened in the era of smartphones and all what I call distracted workers and distracted adults and distracted students it comes across the impression that 100% of the school day, the students are using a computer and sitting right in front of a screen. And that's obviously not happening. But there's confusion by adults that students are just sitting in front of a screen all day. And what's happening is they're sitting in front of these things all day. Now, that's even beyond the classroom. And it is an epidemic problem. And I've mentioned when I go to stuff, I'll see people at a traffic light. They're the first car, and they got their head down looking at a phone. And you're like, come out of it, quit flipping through videos. We're getting ready to go. They have no restraint, hardly any restraint and self-discipline to stay off the phone. And I go to the YMCA to work out, and all these people are sitting there. Probably 80% of them are sitting on these machines, and they're flipping through the phone, and they've totally lost track of time. So this is just not a student thing. This is a young adult and even older adult kind of epidemic. But it circled back to this, where we got to make the distinction that with school issued computers, and nothing's 100%. So I always say, don't 1% me to death here. You'll have 1% exceptions here. But the school in the classroom and the teacher controls really with a school issued computer what they're going to and not going to with the internet content management system, and how much they're using technology for it and not in front of a computer screen. And by the way, there's a lot of other tools in the classroom for the teacher. I know they have like a projection system that they display things. Does that count in the 45 minutes? If you bring in an external presenter and you're bringing them in just like we're using here through something like Teams, does that count? And so you're getting it mixed up with all the time and energy that folks are heads down and they can't pull themselves away from looking at a screen. And our staff knows that even in meetings, when I go to a meeting, put your screen down. Look at the people that are talking. You know, you're sitting there personally in a meeting, get your head down off a screen. You can do it. It does take some restraint, but it has contributed to this problem of folks thinking people's head down, they can't pull themselves off a screen even to have a conversation. So the concern is legitimate. Now, the problem is it's not happening 100% where the kids got their head on a screen 100% of the time in the classroom. But enough people see it in their day-to-day lives, they're assuming that's happening within the classroom itself. So there has to be an effort to educate, and that's one of the roles that you all play. It's one of the roles I play, is to try to educate folks on, hey, listen, this really does help the educational experience. It's a good thing, but in moderation.
Hey,
and
Kevin.
Whoa, who was that? Got to have a meter there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's someone that's doing something else, so I don't know. So please take a look at whoever that is. We'll pause for our muters, try to find out who that is, and mute them. And by the way, anytime you're on one of these, you probably should mute yourself unless you're a speaker. So just come on and make sure you're muted. I'll just circle back to that. There's legitimate concerns. I don't think it is moving through the session so far, but I think it's going to take some education, because there's this thing about kids got heads down all the time on it. So we got to remind them the smartphones are turned off and should be put away in the schools and classrooms. And I am 100% for that. I think you got to start getting some skills and then start interacting face to face with folks, and even on things that have tension to them versus just sitting there punching out a screen going back and forth. I think that's a really good thing. And I say it for adults too, is try to use this stuff in moderation. Don't have heads down on it all the time. So I think that's a skill set, and just educating, legislators and leaders that we do have tools in place that with a school issued device, when they're in the classroom, that really say they're only going to certain places and certain times, and they're not sitting there all hours of the day, heads down on a computer screen. So
David, I put a note in the chat on that one, and it has not moved at all yet. But our staff, to your point, our OET staff has prepared a bill review. And if it does begin to move, we definitely will meet with Senator Tishner, who was the bill sponsor, or, a lot of times we'll see these bills more than one session if it doesn't move.
Yeah.
So we could spend time during the interim educating her and hopefully not seeing this bill again.
But I think that's to that point with her, but I think there's a point you got to educate your own district and your own district staff and your own communities. This is just not us working on. I can tell you this is across the country. I'm seeing this with my peers. This is the consequence of all these smartphones being in these schools for so long and people heads down and beyond there with everybody's head down looking at a computer screen nearly all the time versus interacting with folks. And there's a balance of this.
David, that's exactly right. And so it's going to take our community of education technology leaders who know about this, who care about this, and instead of making the assumption that what goes on beyond campus on personal devices and with social media and what we've talked about with entertainment types of digital technologies is the assumption and collision of what's actually going on in the learning space with teachers and students. So we're pushing for get in and find out, find out how much our kids are actually on screens during a day. That's helpful. And to your point, we watched 2 weeks ago, two other states, this bill was actually passed. A similar bill, right? A version of it in some way, shape, or form. And we've talked to those other states, and we think that we can all work together to get out in front of it if it does resurface again, to your point, to just educate folks and help them understand what's actually going on with our structures and in the KETS environment in our classrooms.
Yeah. North Carolina told me there was one district that they have, it's one, that has moved to a model of there are 2 days per week in their instructional week that they are not permitted to use technology at all. That's what this is. That's what's happening here. And there's a balance of this, and it gets a bad name. It kind of reminds me when we went to COVID and we were able to continue things, and then almost got the beat down for making sure people could keep on doing some things, even in a limited fashion, because it's out there. And it's even this. I think COVID has influenced that situation. They think that the kids are just looking at a computer screen all the time, and the smartphone has contributed to this. And I would say with just not the students, but young adults and adults with their heads down on a computer screen. Even I see where this was talked about at CAST, and I think Joe, to your comment's a good one in there. But I got to tell you, I know people, there's rare situations, so I say don't 1% me, where there's presenters, and I'm sitting in a CAST event, and people with their computer screens up, and I can tell they're doing other stuff. And I know there's hot things going on. I know there's rare exceptions, but there are certain times, and our staff knows this during our OET team huddles. You can put this computer screen down. And I'm hoping when you go to events, you are paying attention to the presenter versus their heads down looking down at a phone screen or looking down at a computer screen when you have someone up on the front that's presenting. And I tell you, on the other way around, when you're presenting and you're seeing people on all these screens and their phones, you have 80% of the audience that's doing that. And these are adults, not students. That's a problem. And that's a problem for all of us in the adult community to set that standard, because students see you doing that, they'll go, well, it becomes a model. So obviously I'm a champion of education technology, but it's got to be some balance. And we got to pull people down from just their head down in a screen in life, and I call it distracted living and working versus just interacting with folks. So any other bills that I failed to mention?
Nothing specific, David. There are a couple of AI and data privacy bills and things that are not Kentucky K-12 specific. There's the AI companion. There's AI being used for, mental health and other things. And so if anything comes out of those or they get amended in such a way that we need to discuss those. There will be a guidance document that the department will be putting together, and I'll point those out at an upcoming webcast. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I do want to, before we go to the closed session, and anyone can say, is the Kentucky Associated School for School in Technology, the CAST event was awesome. I really appreciate all those that lead that effort of our districts. They spend the time and energy, their extra time and energy to put that in place. I know I get a lot out of going to those events. The CIO Summit, we're going to spend time on that. Um, the thing I got from that is, and Marty, we were talking about it, is all the folks, and I appreciate this because sometimes you're all working hard. You only need to pat in the back just once in a while. All of us do. Um, we realize we're pushing hard, and our staff is pushing hard. I feel it. Our districts are pushing hard. But all the folks that came up to me sometime during the remaining of that event and really said, "Hey, listen, I know things are hard, but this is the right direction." And by the way, I do want to remind some folks of the districts, this is the direction you ask us to go in. We're talking about with Q's and moving that direction. I know it's hard, but this well positions our state to go forward. It reminds me of the early days of going to the cloud, lots of pushback. But now it's like, why would you do anything else? Well, I can tell you during those days, it didn't feel like that. We were trying to position us for the future. Same thing when the internet came along and every other major thing they're doing. But I do appreciate those folks that came up to me. I know Marty and we have other folks that said, I know this is hard. I know there is a pushback, but this truly is the right direction to go for us. And so I do appreciate that. That was just a wonderful event for that. I always enjoy going to the technician session. That was wonderful, insightful, gives you a good another insight to what's going on in school districts besides the feedback that we get at the end of the year and the CIO Summit. Really gives us a good pulse and heartbeat of how things are playing out. Also had a chance to go to a number of sessions and try to interact with our vendor partners. I try to go definitely the ones that we have a lot of work with. I try to go and see them in their environment and obviously champion them going around um, and what they do because they make what we do. They're part of our huddle. We got to have them be successful and in sync with what we're doing, and that's why this event is we open it up for everyone to try to see. Here's what we got going on because we want everyone in the team huddle. Our staff, the districts, our vendor partners, trying to move in the same direction in trying to accomplish some good things for students and teachers and staff going forward. But it's just a wonderful event. But I do appreciate those that go above and beyond in districts to lead that. The reason I know the works of all, we used to lead that in OET, and I recognize the worry that it goes to put those on and the effort. So maybe it takes someone to actually have done it and realize the magnitude, what it takes and all the moving parts and the sacrifice of your time it takes to make that a special event. So I really appreciate it. And it's unique in the United States to where there is this collaborative effort between a DOE and districts. And you see it in the summit. That doesn't occur anywhere else. That's something we should be very proud of. That collaborative effort, why it's not 100% perfect, is something I celebrate. And to have an event that you have multiple organizations, you have the vendor partners, you have Department of Education, you have districts working together to make it a special event for all the attendees, all the districts, even our staff, all the teachers that are out there, and the vendor partners. Man, what an awesome thing! And so I don't want to make light of that. It is one of my favorite. Kind of rejuvenates me, like our STLP event. Gives me some energy. It's a good therapy too, because you recognize some other folks are going through the tough times that you are. So it's therapeutic. So I do appreciate the work that doing there. I give a chance for anyone else to make comments or make posts here about it.
David, I know the number of sessions that were offered that our EdTech leaders stepped up to help lead big discussions and big concepts. I know looking at the CAST team put together, looking at the session matrix is really once again another step forward. So it's nice yesterday, kind of reflecting a bit. We had an opportunity to reflect on the CAST team, the leadership team that came together and led that awesome event, and then what opportunity it provided all of us. And as we were reflecting and talking about how many people stopped us intentionally to talk about. I think the thing that really hit home for me was just how specific folks were in very small details, in some senses, big picture, and how those details move into big picture long term. Really, really great opportunity, I think, for our state moving forward, and we're super excited. So, yes, in the chat, Rhonda, awesome job, absolutely awesome job, and the rest of the team.
I use this analogy a bit. There's a hesitation by folks to compliment others because they feel like they can't criticize them in the future. I use like people making food. There's this thing. Well, I don't want to say, hey, listen, that was pretty good, because that may take away my ability to criticize. Because I say, hey, nice job one time, I can't really say you need to do this better on the other time. So I would just say people should not hoard their compliments. And I just say this, and generally just not of us, but of others. I try to be complimentary of folks and just not hold those back because, you don't know when you get a chance to say them to others. And I would say this even to family, to friends, and in your work life is don't hoard those. It's okay. And there's enough, like I say, there's enough joy for everybody. Just everybody just doing well doesn't mean it takes away from your ability to do it. And there's not a limited supply of joy of success. I would say that. And there's this feeling of, well, if I give someone else confidence, that reduces my ability to have some of that. So, and I just tell you, it just takes a one pat on the back for me. I don't have to have a bunch of them, and it takes me, and I can keep on going a long distance. When you hear nothing for a long period of time, um, and I'd say that goes for anybody. Yeah, so it's okay. It's okay to give some people some high fives, and you can still be fussing with them and critical of them. It doesn't take away that ability. All right, so we're gonna for our YouTube public audience, we're going to shortly stop, because we're next going to cover for our OET staff and for our districts the results of the closed session that we had at the CIO Summit, where I wanted them to feel very comfortable speaking in that setting, to be a safe setting. They could, lay out things that this direction they want us to go in different areas. And, we listened to this. So we're going to honor that and keep that in a closed audience as we go over those results with our OET staff and with our district leaders that remain on here during the closed session. So for those that have joined us beyond that, thanks for joining us today. Hope you will, is a plug on for the couple items we had here earlier, is you watch that Education Matters webcast or the TV broadcast, and you join us of our STLP State Championship in April 24th. All right, so for our production crew here, is you can go ahead and I'll say goodbye to our YouTube KD Media Portal audience. So goodbye and thanks for joining us. And just for the rest of you, kind of pause here as we kind of go through some other items.